They weren't refugees. They weren't orphans. Their mothers were alive. Their homes were standing. Their country was still fighting. And yet, Finland sent 70,000 children away. Not to relatives, not to neighbors, to strangers, in a foreign country, speaking a language none of those children understood. 70,000 children. And the most disturbing part of this story isn't what happened on those train platforms in 1940. It's what happened after the war ended, and the children were supposed to come home. It started with bombs. November 1939. Soviet forces crossed the Finnish border and the Winter War began. Finnish cities were being shelled. Families were hiding in basements. And the Finnish government faced a decision that no government should ever have to face. How do you protect children from a war that is happening in their own backyard? The answer they landed on would fracture thousands of families for generations. Send the children to Sweden. Sweden was neutral. Sweden was safe. Sweden was just across the Gulf of Bothnia, close enough that it felt temporary. It wasn't. What happened on those platforms is something that once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. Mothers dressed their children in their best wool coats. They packed small cardboard suitcases with a change of clothes, a toy, sometimes a photograph. They pinned a numbered paper tag to each child's chest, like luggage, like a parcel being mailed. And then they let go. No return date. No signed contract guaranteeing the child would come back. No phone calls. No video messages. Letters, if they arrived at all, took weeks and were often written in two languages nobody in the family could fully read on the other side. Some of these children were 3 years old. 3 years old, handed to a stranger on a platform, loaded onto a train, then a ferry across a freezing sea, then another train, then delivered to a Swedish family they had never met, in a house that smelled different, with food that tasted different, in a country where every single word being spoken around them was completely foreign. And they were told, "This is temporary. You'll go home soon." They believed it. For a while. Here is where the story turns. Because Sweden didn't just house these children. Sweden loved them. Swedish foster families fed them, clothed them, enrolled them in school, taught them Swedish, celebrated their birthdays, tucked them in at night, called them by Swedish nicknames. And children, especially small children, do what children do. They adapted. They bonded. They forgot. Not all of them. Not completely. But enough. By 1944, when Finland's wars finally wound down and the government began organizing the return of the children, something devastating was discovered. Many of the children didn't want to go back. Not because Finland was dangerous anymore, but because Sweden was home now. The Swedish foster mother was the only mother they could clearly remember. The Swedish language was the one they dreamed in. The Finnish family waiting for them on the other side of the water. The mother who had cried every night for 4 years waiting for their return was, to some of these children, a stranger. Imagine being that Finnish mother. You survived the bombs. You survived the hunger. You survived 4 years of not knowing if your child was alive. You got the letter saying your child is coming home. You stood on that platform in your best dress, hands shaking, watching the train arrive. And your child stepped off and looked at you like they didn't know you. Because they didn't. Not really. Not anymore. Some children returned to Finland and spent years in silent grief, mourning the Swedish family they had been taken from. Some refused to speak Finnish at all. Some ran away. Some wrote letters in Swedish to their foster families begging to come back. And some Finnish mothers, broken by what they saw, quietly arranged for their children to return to Sweden permanently. They had saved their children from the bombs, and lost them anyway. Now here is what they never taught you in school. Finland is not the only country where this happened. During World War II, Britain evacuated nearly 3 million children out of cities in what they called Operation Pied Piper. Children as young as 5 were sent to the countryside, separated from their parents for years. Thousands came back changed, traumatized, detached. Many British adults today trace lifelong emotional damage to those years. In Norway, thousands of children born to Norwegian mothers and German soldiers, called Tyskerbarna, the German children, were taken from their mothers after the war, placed in institutions, and subjected to abuse and medical experiments. Norway's government apologized. Decades later, in Spain, babies were taken from mothers in hospitals for 40 years, from the 1940s all the way to the 1980s, by a network of nuns, priests, and doctors. Mothers were told their babies died. The babies were sold. 300,000 children. Spain is still reckoning with it now. In Argentina, the military dictatorship stole babies from mothers they had already murdered and gave those children to military families to raise as their own. The grandmothers of Plaza de Mayo are still finding those children today. Some of them are in their 40s and 50s. Some of them had no idea. And in Australia, Canada, the United States, governments took indigenous children from their families for over a century. Entire generations stripped of language, identity, and family. Forced into institutions, told to forget where they came from. Different countries, different decades, different methods. Same crime. Back to Finland. The Finnish government has never issued a formal apology to the war children or their families. There have been no reparations, no official memorial, no national reckoning. The children who survived, now in their 80s and 90s, have spent their entire lives caught between two identities, two languages, two mothers, two versions of home. Some of them found peace. Some of them never did. And the Swedish families who raised them, who loved them, who still love them, were never officially recognized either. Not as heroes, not as anything. Just people who did what they did in a war that asked impossible things of ordinary people. 70,000 children. That is not a footnote. That is not a minor historical detail buried in an academic paper. That is 70,000 individual childhoods. 70,000 mothers who let go on a platform. 70,000 families that were never quite the same again. And most people have never heard this story, which is exactly why we tell it. Because there are stories like this, hidden in plain sight, in almost every country on Earth. Stories that governments quietly filed away. Stories that survivors were too ashamed or too broken to tell. Stories that got lost in the noise of the bigger, louder wars that surrounded them. We are going to cover them. The ones from countries you trust. The ones involving children. The ones where the system failed the most vulnerable people inside it, and then called it policy. Some of those stories will make this one look mild. We are covering the Argentinian stolen babies next, and if you think what Finland did was hard to hear, wait until you hear what the generals in Buenos Aires did, and what happened to the mothers who dared ask questions. If you made it to the end of this video, you already know you're the kind of person who needs to hear what others choose to ignore. Share this, not for us, for the 70,000 children who were handed off on a platform and never fully came home. Comment the word Finland if this story hit you. And if there is a hidden history you think the world needs to hear, drop it below. We read every single one.